Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather and this is Create Your Own Cozy. For those of you who have been with me for a while, I have been teasing you about a special project I had coming up, and this is it. Someone from the IOD marketing department reached out to me and said, hey, do you want to see the new release early and pick out what speaks to you, have it sent to you early so that you can have a video ready for release time? And I was like, oh my gosh, what's the catch? I love Iron Orchid Designs, or what we call IOD. I love the quality of the product. I love the style of the product. And most importantly to me, I love the heart behind the owners of the product. So of course I jumped at this opportunity and had so much fun with this new release. I picked the ones that spoke to me. The transfers were not available yet and are coming to me shortly. So I will have another follow-up video for you with the transfers. But I just wanted to show you how much fun you can have to get your creative juices flowing, to get to making again. I know right now we are in the end of cray cray May with 3 kids in school, with all the stuff going on, and doing projects and being creative has not really been on the list. However, because I was working on this video, I really found myself slowing down and getting some creative therapy. And I'd like to encourage you to do the same for yourself. It has been a crazy season with school ending, and I'm just reminding you guys to take care of yourself. So let's go ahead and get started on these projects. You guys can only imagine the excitement when this package arrived on my front porch early before anyone else could see it. My first paint inlay ever, the Trompe L'oeil in the color bleu. I do know that this comes in a couple, I think it comes in a total of 4 colors, and the beige one, I totally have my eye on the beige one, but I enjoyed going a little bit colorful, and this one with blue, very French country. These next 2 were a little bit outside my normal, the Pennsylvania Folk stamp, and then this primitive mold that goes very well with that stamp. I found it was easier for me to be colorful with those particular stamps. And then this stamp, the rural scenes, was my first. Obviously, so many possibilities with that one. But let's get started on project number 1. First thing I'm going to do is get out my DIY paint in the color Aviary. I had thrifted these. I don't know if I got these for free or if I thrifted these frames for like $1. 2 coats of Aviary, and I am just getting some old book pages and creasing the edges where I should cut, then doing some decoupage. I really love the DIY liquid patina for decoupage, but you could use Mod Podge or any of your other mediums for this. It's such a great background, a great neutral background. And then I grabbed the stamp right here, Pennsylvania Folk, for the leaves and for the stem, and I will use this in more detail in a later project. But don't forget to take off your top sheet, grab some 220 grit sandpaper, and just season the stamp. That gives the stamp a little bit more grit for your permanent ink, or even you can use paint on here, but I am using permanent ink here and just doing a little stem and leaf. I'm going to end up painting the leaf and then using the primitive mold. I just found these florals really cute and inspiring, and it was easy for me to use color with this guy. So I put cornstarch in there and made sure that I used gravity on my side when it was time to get the mold out. I used the DAS clay. I know IOD also has some air dry clay. I've just not gotten my hands on that yet. So I'm going to decoupage the old book page with DIY's liquid patina. An old music sheet would be really cool here too. Or you could do something like that's a nice neutral background with kind disregards or anything like that. And then while the clay is still wet, I am just going over it 2 coats with DIY paint Cowgirl Coral. I have heard that if you paint the clay while it is still wet, it is less likely to crack. And I'm just going to glue this clay on, paint the little leaves that green color just so it's this cute little floral. And then I kind of got inspired because it's very much graduation and end of the year world over here. So after I wet distressed and then put Big Top over the frame, I decided to do a little bit of drop cloth. Just did some encouraging words about blooming and thriving. I used these cheap little plastic stamps that they sell on Amazon or sometimes at Hobby Lobby. This is just my plug, IOD. I would love for you guys to come up with a great way to have small letter and number stamps. Would love it, because look, this is not even staying on. They're a mess. We need small, amazing stamps from IOD. Anyway, that is the end of my plug. Let me know in the comments below if you guys would like small IOD stamps too. I'm sure they would love to hear it. So I had the molds out and made pretty much every mold that was on there, and then looked around my stash to see what else I could apply these to. I had grabbed these terracotta pots at the thrift store for around $1 a piece and decided these cute little bunnies would be perfect on here. I used Type-On glue, glued them on obviously while they are still wet, and then used some painter's tape around them to make sure that the very ends of the mold dried at that curve. And then after it was completely dry, I did wait overnight just because that's what the schedule allowed. I went over the whole thing with 2 coats of Skeleton Key, which is this beautiful grayish blue. Love this color for a neutral. So I painted 2 coats of this and then sealed the paint with DIY Big Top so I could control the wax, and then went over it with white wax. And I'm super happy with the French country pottery look that this gave. And you will see further on through this project, I did try a couple of other options as well, but this Skeleton Key one was my favorite. Let me know in the comments below, which one did you like? This next one was a do-over project, and I just wanted to get out of my stash. I'm not a super fan of the baking soda technique, and I tried it on this and decided it needed another makeover. So using my new paintbrush, DIY paintbrush Perfectionist, which is my favorite one of the 5 if you need to know, and the color Apothecary. Did 2 coats, glued the mold on top, and then covered it with Big Top, and much happier with this result. Okay, so this turned out being my art therapy for the week. There is always one. I use the Pennsylvania Folk stamp. I really like the inspiration picture that's on the back here and these light pastel-y colors. Listen, if you are a big color person, this is a perfect one to just go crazy with color. But I particularly love neutrals, and I found this box right here. I think it was $2 or $3 at the thrift store. Can you guys let me know in the comments below, what are those numbers for? I tried Google Lensing this and nothing came up, but I've really loved redoing boxes lately, and this one was the right price and the right size. So I decided to, let's go colorful with the base. I did 2 coats of Aviary. I am loving this green color. And I'm using the mister bottle for the second coat to very much smooth out the paint finish and have a nice even top layer. You don't just have to use these mister bottles for furniture. You can use it on smalls too to have a nice smooth top layer. Then I tried laying out the stamps to try to decide what I wanted to do. I made sure that I did my wet distressing before I did the stamping because I didn't want it to mess up the stamping. Now, if I could take anything back, I would not put the Big Top on right now. I feel like this was where some of my surface got messed up later in the process when I stamped and I didn't like how it looked, and I sanded it back and then I repainted and resealed and the finish isn't quite right. So do as I say, not as I do. Go ahead and stamp directly over the clay base paint. Don't top coat it just yet. I thought, well, this would be an easy way, like if I don't like the way it comes out, that I could just rub it back because there's a top coat on there. But the permanent ink is super permanent. So when I put a branch in a place that I didn't want it to remain, it didn't come right off. And I'm like, well, let's just try painting right back over it. And that just looked different because I had already top coated. Now you see here, I'm using the masks that come with the stamps so that the branches can look like they're kind of behind these first stamps. I really like the masking process where you can look like there's a depth by covering up your front stamp and making the others look behind it. So the first thing I did, as you can see, that's where I sanded back my mistake, and look at that. Yeah, it's annoying. That's not top coated just yet, it's still drying. But so what I'm doing here is I'm using White Swan, I used the color Skeleton Key, I used French Millenery, and I used Apothecary for the leaves. Since the base of it was green, I thought Apothecary would be a good leaf color. I did do 2 coats of all of these colors. I thought that 2 solid coats of each color would make them vibrant, even though they're like light muted colors, if that makes sense. So in my hindsight, I would have done the stamp, 2 coats of the paint, and then re-stamped over the top. And then if everything was to my liking, that's when I would have gone out with a spray paint to spray over all of it so that none of this smeared. And I feel like that's how the surface would have looked, nice and consistent. And that way, if there's anything that didn't turn out the way I liked it, it can be wet distressed down, sanded down. You could blend the colors still by adding the mister to it, and you'd have more chance to kind of play with the surface and make sure it was consistent. So again, do as I say, not as I do. Stamp, 2 coats of paint, restamp, and then do your top coat. And then you won't have this little space on the side that like is screaming at you. Oh boy. Full disclosure, this is my very first time using a paint inlay. I think I had kind of avoided it just because there is a little bit of a financial investment when doing these. And I had heard from some users that it was a little tougher to do, but I had watched enough videos that I figured I am going to show you guys how to do this, and then it is not as scary as your brain may have told you. So here's what I do know. You do your first coat of paint. It needs to be a chalk style or a clay-based paint. You let that dry, and then you lay out your pattern and kind of figure out where you want it to go. Next, you do your second layer of paint, and it's good that this is a solid layer. You don't want to do it too thin or too thick. You know, just right is the right thing to do. But basically what you're doing is you're creating the surface that the inlay is going to meld with. So you want to make sure there's enough wet paint there. Then you spray mist the paint side of the inlay to kind of get that ready to stick. And then you attach it. I mean, that easy, right? So you kind of push it down, make sure that it melds with the paint on there, kind of get all the wrinkles out. Use your fingers, do that. I've seen some people use a brayer, but I just used my fingers, then sprayed over the top, wiped it down so that water is not dripping, and then let that completely dry. When that's dry, you go back and you spray it again. You make sure there's not drippy water. And then you pull back the paper. If it is at all tugging, you get it wet again. But guys, look how beautiful that is. I am loving this blue paint inlay with the skeleton key background. Now, I did get the paint a little thick along the edges, so I have not sealed this yet, so I can still play with my paint, adding some water, sanding it to kind of make sure that that space isn't super clumpy. Oh, look, I sanded too much right here, so I just touched up the paint with a little bit of water on my paintbrush and it was easily hidden. Again, the great part of not sealing a project too soon. Oh my goodness, I think I've learned my lesson from that last project. So I'm going to take it outside and seal it with a top coat, and I think this one turned out gorgeous. What do you guys think? After that last one, I feel like I'm an inlay pro now. So I thrifted this guy a long time ago, and it's been in my stash waiting for the perfect project. You can see right here in the middle, it's kind of stained with water, but there's not a surface difference. So I'm basically covering the whole thing with crud cutter to get off all the oils. You can see this one is a bleeder. So I continued to clean this up and get all those stickies off, and then went over it with 2 coats of DIY's Salvation solution in the clear color. White would have worked as well. After doing that, I did 2 coats of White Swan. I just really felt like this needed to be a nice neutral base. For the second coat, I am using my Mister bottle again just to get a nice, even, smooth layer of the DIY paint. And then after that, I am definitely wet distressing these scallopy edges. This is not a traditional round Lazy Susan, and I wanted the scallop portion of this to stick out. Now, in my mind's eye, I was originally going to use the Rural Scene stamp, and you'll see that I lay it out. But as I'm looking at the pieces, and I'm like, does this really make sense? I know like some of these wallpapery type looks just have different scenes in them. But as I was looking at this, I was like, I don't know if this is the look that this is supposed to be. While this probably would have turned out great, and I was going to use like a brown burnt umber looking stamp so that it would be like a white and brown, just very French country looking thing. Since I was now a paint inlay expert, I decided, let's do this. Let's try a round surface, or, you know, a nice circle where you need perfection. So I'm cutting all the way to the edge of where the center of these inlays need to kind of meet up. And you will see that I do a measure to try to find the center as best as I could. Obviously, some sides have scallops and some don't. So I needed to take that into account to make this look symmetrical. So I cut out each of the pieces so that I could lay them out and kind of decide where they need to meet up. And then I cut off the ends. Just because they're a certain length doesn't mean you have to keep them that way. I cut off the ends, made a spot where the paper needs to come to, since I'm going to be painting over the center circle. Did my my second coat of White Swan, sprayed the paint side, put it down, and made sure that it was really connected with the paint, and then sprayed the top again, let it dry. And the fun thing about pulling it up and this lovely reveal, oh my goodness, look how beautiful this is. So I was like, for sure I could overlap this. So I kind of was careful about where I put the paint, where the other centers were going to overlap. And I'm really happy with how this one turned out. Guys, I think it is beautiful. I was going to try to do a couple more little sprigs, and then when I had the 4 done, I'm like, you know what? I don't want to mess this up. Obviously I could figure it out, but I think it's beautiful and simplistic the way it is. This way it can be used without worrying about covering the whole thing up, and be a very practical home decor item. I might have a tough time letting this one go. We'll see if it makes it to my booth or if it's staying at home to be babysat for a little while at least. You know I can't do 8 projects in a video and not include a basket. So I had this in my stash. It has like this little inside liner, and I thought, now I could see those rural scenes on top of a drop cloth. So I just cut it down, cut the drop cloth down to, or ripped the drop cloth down to the size that I wanted it to be, and then stamped the drop cloth, hot glued it on there. And what a simple update to this basket when I mean, it was kind of cute on its own, but I think it looks so much better just with this little detail. Simple, but elevated. What do you guys think? For my 8th and final product of this video, guys, I could have done so many more, so many fun things. This was an iPad stand where I was over the pattern that was on it and had painted it, and then I just repainted it to the color Prairie Gray. I tried using a white stamp on top of the Prairie Gray and did not love it. So, spoiler alert, I repainted the Prairie Gray and then went over with the same pattern with black ink. I like the subtlety of this, and when you're doing home decor like this, sometimes you just have these little subtle updates to stuff that you already have that can really elevate your space without being so in your face. So that's why I really like the stamp. It's super subtle. It adds such a detail and just this wonderful look for a stand that you can use for an iPad or a recipe stand in your kitchen. Just something that you're not going to buy at Hobby Lobby, but that makes your space just so elevated. Also, for this one, after I sprayed the top coat, I did go over it with some dark wax just so the edges had that aged look to it. as I was editing my video, look what arrived on my doorstep. Out of the transfers, these are the 2 transfer books that I decided to try out. And you can expect a video of these coming later. I've got the seed catalog transfer, and I'm really excited about this one. The Maze Roses, 4 12 by 16 sheets. Guys, look at this. Look at the neutrals. Ooh-wee. So if you guys are putting in an IOD order today, when this is released, these are the 2 that I'm going to be playing with in case you want to order them as well. So what'd you guys think? Like, aren't these so much fun? Did you guys have a favorite project? I really did enjoy using the Paint Inlays for the first time. I think I had some anxiety just because I had heard some people say that they had struggled with it a little bit, but it is such a cool product where the paint just melds with the original paint and you can't see any haze of a transfer or anything. So I am really opening my eyes to Paint Inlays and what they have to offer in the way of smalls and refinishing furniture. I do have to say one of my favorites though is that Pennsylvania Folk stamp. I think one of the benefits I'm starting to see with stamps is that it is like a transfer that can keep on being used over and over again if you add the paint component to it. And I really love the paint stamp technique because you can make it look as if it was like a transfer, but you can pick your own colors. You can mix and match so many different things, and it is so reusable. And if you're a reseller, you can duplicate it instead of buying a bunch of transfer books. So that is one of the things I'm really enjoying about the stamp product as a way to constantly reuse it. It's a great investment in my opinion. I think that project was my favorite though, because that is the one where I did get, I mean, it was a process, right? So I came back and I'd sit down and I'd take the time to paint and reflect. And there's just something so creative about coloring by numbers, right? Like kids color with crayons all the time inside the lines. Why don't we do that as adults? So I really enjoyed that project and I really enjoyed using the Paint Inlays. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite project was and what your favorite product was. Is there a new IOD product that you have got to get your hands on? Along those lines, if you don't have an IOD retailer, you can go to ironorchiddesigns.com and find the closest retailer to you so that you can just go into their place, grab the stuff and not worry about shipping. If you do not have a retailer, I would encourage you to go visit my friend Sonnet at sonnetsgardenblooms.com, and I will put that down in the description below. I currently don't sell these products yet, although it is one of my goals this year to get my website going and sell it online. I'm not able to do it in my vendor booth because there is someone locally, but it is one of my goals to, with cash, have enough cash to be able to invest in that and put that online. So let me know in the comments below, would you buy these things for me if I got my website? If I got my tush and gear and got my website going? We're so close to getting the DIY products on there. I just have a couple more things to button up before I can make that live. And if that starts going well, and then I want to be a cash business where I only buy product that I can pay for. So that is my goal this year. You guys are so awesome in helping me by watching my content. If you're not already subscribed, please consider subscribing to my channel. I do DIY videos, vendor booth updates. I love doing furniture, just all of the other fun things around this creative life and this creative small business that I built. So I usually do videos Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern on a weekly basis. And sometimes I can even get my act together and throw in an extra one. So thank you so much for being here. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up and I will see you guys in the next video.